Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7 by 7 So today we're going to talk about the other aspect of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the way that it differs from the Star Wars movies right now that plays into the whole brand fatigue idea that we've been talking about here on the show. And this is not an aspect of the MCU that has been offered up in comparison to Star Wars, but I think it is worth paying attention to because again, if you're going to talk about the idea that you can have multiple Marvel movies in the space of a year and people don't get tired of them, well, why can't Star Wars do the same thing? And so we talked about the scheduling of how the universe is kicked off and that sort of thing yesterday. And so do check that out if you want to dive more into that aspect of things. But this particular aspect hasn't been talked about, and I think it is especially relevant, and it has to do with the end credits scenes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. So let's take a quick stroll back to May of 2008 when the first Iron Man movie came out. The end credits little scene involved Sam Jackson showing up as Nick Fury and talking to Robert Downey Jr. about an Avengers initiative. So already they're starting to hint at a larger universe beyond the movie that we just saw. And the fact that they're talking about an Avengers initiative, well, the Avengers movie didn't come out until May of 2012, 4 years after the original Iron Man, 4 years after that end credits scene. So they had 4 years of building up interest and excitement and drama about the fact that there was going to be a full-on Avengers movie that would be a full team movie and have a ton of people in it. So not the case with Solo: A Star Wars Story, right? Although I think that if they had used that scene, and you know what scene I'm talking about if you've seen the movie or you've read the spoilers about the movie, if you haven't seen Solo yet in theaters and you don't want this spoiled for you, well, I'm not going to say it on this episode. I've talked about it earlier in the week, so if you want to check out one of those episodes, then by all means, please do. But for anybody listening who hasn't seen Solo yet and doesn't want it spoiled, then we'll just say, look, that cameo, and when you see the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. Anyway, if Lucasfilm had taken that scene and cut it out of the movie and instead dumped it at the end of the movie after the credits, well then, we would be talking about an entirely different situation. And I did propose the idea of a Scoundrels cinematic universe based on the existence of that scene, but I think it probably would have been a much more likely possibility if Lucasfilm had put it at the end credits. That would really telegraph it a lot harder, the idea that they intend to make more movies following in this vein and in this timeline, or this portion of the timeline. But they did not do that, and so here we are thinking that Solo is a standalone story and that there's not much else to it, so it doesn't create that sense of motivation of, wow, how does this fit into the larger picture of things? So it's really kind of comparatively equal in that case to the original Thor or the original Captain America movies, because I mean, yeah, Woody Harrelson has some star power and some, cachet at the box office, and Emilia Clarke has some star power too, but, it's nothing to match Robert Downey Jr. and Jeff Bridges showing up in Iron Man and Don Cheadle getting involved in Iron Man 2. Like, you've got more star power in those first two Iron Man movies than you do in Solo: A Star Wars Story, and so Solo is almost more akin to Thor or to Captain America: The First Avenger, because, I mean, really, Chris Evans is best known as the Human Torch from the previously failed version of Fantastic Four before Josh Trank got his hands on it. So it's more in line with that, and, perhaps unsurprisingly, the numbers are kind of in line with it too, except for the fact that Solo didn't get nearly as well reviewed by the critics, and so it's never a clean comparison. There are just too many factors at play, but again, the point of this is to show that you can't really compare Solo: A Star Wars Story to the movies of the cinematic universe when you talk about brand fatigue, because we are in a different phase of that whole life cycle for Star Wars than we are for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And they are structured in a different way. All of those stories in the MCU are being structured and were structured to build upon each other and to show the interconnections with each other, so that way it would lead to one big event movie, and Solo was not designed to do that. And that is going to do it for today's episode of the podcast. Over on the audio version, I am doing Last Jedi Trivia to top things off. That's at sw7x7.com/iTunes or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. But for now, it just remains for me to say thank you so much for watching, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.